Have you ever been enveloped by a room humming with music and laughter, yet felt like an accidental intruder in someone else's carefully constructed life? That was my Thursday night, precisely 9:14 p.m., perched on the rooftop corner of the Galloway Hotel. I recall the exact moment because I'd checked my watch for the sixth time, a gnawing realization setting in. I hadn't exchanged a single word with my wife in nearly an hour. Her name is Celine Prescott. Not a name that screams opulence, yet somehow she made it sound costly. She once possessed a quiet thoughtfulness, never shyness. But that was before the arrival of Marlon and Blake, before the new job, before she began returning home with cryptic inside jokes and unfamiliar perfumes clinging to her. By the way, please like and subscribe if you enjoy stories like this. The invitation had been sprung upon me that very morning over burnt toast. "I think you should come tonight," she'd murmured. "My team's throwing a mixer for Mr. Blake. It's kind of a big deal." Mr. Blake, the new co-owner, the one she'd ceaselessly described as resembling an indie movie heartthrob. Yes, of course, I'd readily agreed. What devoted husband wouldn't attend when his wife deemed an event kind of a big deal? I arrived tragically misdressed, khakis, loafers, a button-up that screamed, "trying too hard." Everyone else exuded that curated, effortless elegance seemingly reserved for the truly wealthy. Meanwhile, I was sweating through my shirt, feeling like it was high school picture day all over again. She introduced me to a few people in a rapid-fire blur. "This is Rory," she'd chirped with a polished smile. Not my husband, Rory. Just Rory. One man merely nodded, his gaze never meeting mine. Another inquired about my profession and upon hearing data audits, promptly pivoted to engage a sequined woman. That was the entirety of my welcome committee. Then she simply vanished. No farewell, no, "I'll be right back." Just a slow, deliberate glide across the floor towards a velvet booth where Mr. Blake held court. She touched his shoulder as she leaned in, whispering something I couldn't discern. He laughed. She stayed. I stood transfixed, my drink untouched, jaw rigid. I wasn't angry yet, just profoundly stupid, like someone arriving for a play only to discover the final act had long since concluded. A woman brushed past me, muttering, "I thought he came alone." I don't believe she intended for me to overhear. I slipped away unnoticed. No dramatic exit, no parting note. I simply walked out the way I'd come in, past the doorman who offered a pitying smile. 10 minutes later, as I eased my car out of the parking garage, her name illuminated my phone screen. A text message. A single stark line, "Come back, please." All night she'd acted as if I ceased to exist. Now suddenly I mattered. I stared at the message, car still in park, and for reasons I still cannot fathom, I did not reply. Not yet. I did not go back. Not that night. I drove aimlessly for what felt like an eternity, eventually finding myself in a Taco Bell parking lot just before midnight. I sat there, engine idling, the same 3 words burning on my screen. "Come back, please." No emoji, no follow-up. As if she presumed those words alone could erase 2 hours of her pretending I didn't breathe the same air. But what truly haunted me wasn't the text itself. It was the timing. 9 minutes after I departed. Not 3, not 20. 9. As if something had just transpired or was on the verge of it. For a chilling instant, a sick thought pierced me. Had my very presence interrupted something? I left her unanswered. I didn't block her either. I simply watched the message recede further down my screen as the clock crept into the early morning hours. Eventually, I drove home. She wasn't there. I hadn't expected her to be. When I unlocked the front door, our dog Winnie offered no bark. Only that confused gaze dogs bestow when you return at an unexpected hour. I grabbed a blanket from the hallway closet and collapsed onto the couch. My mind raced, but my body was utterly spent, as if I'd run a marathon just by standing still. She arrived home around 3:40 a.m. I know because the click of the lock startled me awake, one eye half open. She stood in the entryway, a ghost uncertain whether to enter or retreat. Her heels were clutched in her hand. Her makeup seemed blurred, not smudged from tears, but as if it had been kissed away or hastily wiped. She didn't notice me on the couch. She drifted upstairs, quiet as a whisper. I remained silent, listening. The faint creak of closet doors, a drawer sliding open, the bathroom faucet, her phone buzzing twice, then an unnerving silence. The next morning, she behaved as if she'd just returned from a brisk jog. She was already in the kitchen when I entered, hair tied back, coffee brewed, phone face down. No, good morning. Only, you didn't come back. I met her gaze directly and asked, "Why did you text me?" She didn't blink. "Because you left." "That's not a reason." She shrugged, that same damn shrug that once seemed endearing during our courtship, now a transparent deflection. She gazed into her mug as if it held the answer she dared not utter aloud. Then, finally, she spoke. "Blake asked where you were." Blake, her boss, the same Blake with whom she'd shared private laughter, as if they possessed a secret language, the same man who'd touched the small of her back as though he owned it. She made it sound as if her concern for my absence stemmed solely from his notice. My throat tightened. Did he say anything else? She held my gaze for a long moment. He said, "You seem distant." I wanted to laugh. I was distant? I wasn't the one orbiting another man like a planet caught in his gravitational pull. I wasn't the one introducing my own husband as a mere footnote, but I swallowed the words, offering only, "Right." She reached for her phone, tapping swiftly, her fingers trembling slightly, a tremor she attempted to conceal by brushing back her hair. "You overthink things, Rory," she said. "You always have." It wasn't the first time she'd uttered those words, but this time it felt less like an observation and more like a weapon. She pressed a soft, almost robotic kiss to my cheek before leaving for work, the kind you give to maintain appearances in front of judgmental parents. As the door clicked shut behind her, I finally opened the browser on my phone and searched, "How to know if your wife is emotionally cheating." What appeared next sent a cold dread through me. Half the signs were already true. The rest were aligning like a terrible row of dominoes. And then a fragmented memory from the night before, something I hadn't fully processed until I was alone, consumed by my own thoughts. As I exited the event, I'd passed a man seated at a patio table. He wore a silver jacket and observed everything with an unnerving intensity. He looked directly at me as I walked by and said, "Rough night, huh?" I'd simply nodded, unthinking. But now it clicked. He wasn't on the guest list. And he wasn't holding a drink, only a phone angled towards the rooftop, recording something or someone. A horrifying realization dawned. I hadn't merely walked out of a party, I'd walked out of a setup. His face became an unshakable image in my mind. The guy on the patio, silver jacket, phone angled as if live streaming the apocalypse. He hadn't blended in, hadn't schmoozed with cocktails or clapped at speeches. He simply sat there, a ghost with a purpose. And when he'd looked at me and said, "Rough night, huh?" It wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't even sympathetic. It was the tone of a man who already knew precisely what had unfolded, and perhaps why. Later that day, while Celine was still at work, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened her old MacBook. My Apple ID was still logged in from years ago, from a time when we shared playlists and passwords without a second thought. I wasn't snooping, not at first. I simply had this persistent, nagging itch in the back of my brain, a sense that something was deeply amiss, and I couldn't afford to sit idly by, waiting for it to detonate in my face. I had to understand what, or at least who, I was truly dealing with. That's when I saw it. The airdrop history. A file received 2 nights prior, the same night as the rooftop event, from a device named MB Guest 05. I opened it. A single video, only 20 seconds long. No sound. Shot from an angle facing the Velvet Lounge area, the very booth where Celine had been with Blake. In the grainy footage, I saw her laughing. Then Blake reached out, brushing something off her neck, though nothing appeared to be there. She allowed it, didn't even flinch. He leaned in, whispering something, his lips almost grazing her ear. She laughed again. Then he touched her knee. She didn't move it. End of video. I stared at the screen as if it were radioactive. What was I supposed to feel first? Betrayal, confusion, nausea. The worst part wasn't that she allowed it to happen. It was how utterly natural it appeared, as if it wasn't the first time. I closed the laptop, breathing heavily, my hands cold. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. That man on the patio, the one in the silver jacket, he had sent that video. Now the question burned, why? Was it a warning? A threat? A twisted favor? I didn't know, but I knew where to begin. The hotel. That evening I returned to the Galloway. I wasn't expecting an epiphany, merely to retrace my steps or perhaps to quiet the tempest raging in my mind. But as I pulled up, I saw him again, the silver-jacketed man. Same spot, different night, same phone. He caught my eye, a slight smirk playing on his lips, then stood as if he'd been waiting for me all along. "You came back," he said. "Took you long enough." "Who are you?" I asked, skipping all pretense. He extended a hand. "Name's Elias. I do media work." I didn't shake it. He nodded, as if he'd anticipated my refusal. "Your wife's interesting. She moves like someone who doesn't think she's being watched." "I'm not here for games," I said through clenched teeth. "Neither am I," he replied, calm as ever. "Let me ask you something, Rory. Did she tell you about the trip to Miami?" "What trip?" He smirked again. "Exactly." I stood there, heart hammering, fist aching to clench, but I held myself in check. Elias pulled out his phone, tapping. "Your wife isn't just working late, Rory. She's networking, she's building leverage." I wanted to punch him. I wanted to scream. But I remained silent because, deep down, I knew he wasn't lying. He showed me another video. This one shot inside a hotel room. Blurred faces, but one woman wore the exact same blouse Celine had on that night. Her laugh was unmistakable. The video cut before anything explicit, but it didn't need to. The body language spoke volumes. I felt lightheaded, not from the video, but from Elias's unsettling casualness. "What do you want from me?" I managed. "Nothing," he said. "Just thought you should know. Guys like Blake don't change. And women like her, they don't come back unless they're afraid you found out." Then, just like that, he vanished into the city. No threats, no blackmail. Just the quiet detonation of a bomb. When I arrived home, Celine was in the kitchen, utterly composed, as if nothing had happened. She asked if I wanted Thai or sushi. I told her I wasn't hungry. A flicker of suspicion crossed her eyes before she said, "By the way, I might have a work trip coming up." "Miami, of course," I nodded. "Sure, let me know the dates." Because now I wasn't just watching her. I was waiting. 3 days later, she left for the trip. It wasn't officially called Miami. According to her, it was a client summit out of state. But I checked the flight confirmation she'd accidentally left open on her iPad the night before. Miami, Florida. Departure, 6:25 a.m. Return, open-ended. Hotel listed. The same boutique beachfront resort Blake had posted from just 2 weeks earlier on the company's internal social site. He'd tagged it Creative Recharge. She hadn't even bothered to change the password on her tablet. That was her biggest mistake. I watched her pack, feigning normalcy. She triple-checked outfits, counted swimsuits, stood before the mirror, trying on 3 different necklaces before settling on one I'd never seen before. A gift from someone, not from me. I noticed her perfume was new too, lighter, flirtier, the kind that lingers on sheets and skin. Before she walked out the door, she hesitated, as if she felt she ought to say something. I stood by the kitchen island, arms folded, observing her like a stranger in my own house. She offered a half smile and said, "I'll call when I land." I didn't respond. She left anyway, but I wasn't staying behind. 2 days earlier, without telling her, I'd taken time off work. I booked my own flight to Miami on a different airline. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I simply wanted to see, to confirm, to erase all lingering doubts. Sometimes you have to get so close to the fire just to ensure it's real, even if it scorches you. I landed around 11 a.m. I didn't check into a hotel. I waited in the airport Starbucks, nursing 2 coffees, watching people spill out of Terminal C until I saw her. She looked happy, not tired, not stressed. She walked like someone embarking on a vacation, not attending a summit. Blake met her outside beside a black car, not a taxi, not an Uber, a private driver. He hugged her too long, too low. She laughed, tossing her hair. He opened the car door for her as if it were a date, not a business meeting. They pulled away. I followed in a rental car I'd picked up that morning. When they arrived at the resort, there were no briefcases, no lanyards, no other colleagues in sight, just champagne flutes waiting at the check-in desk. She accepted hers without even glancing around. By 2 p.m., I had already witnessed enough to understand the nature of this trip. By 3 p.m., I discreetly followed them to their room, feigning ignorance of their floor, though I knew. I'd overheard the front desk attendant mention penthouse suite as they handed over the key. By 4 p.m., I'd left a note at the front desk, not for her, for Blake, and by the time I returned to my car, a message from an unknown number illuminated my screen. "You're making a mistake. Let her go. She's not yours anymore." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding as if I'd sprinted for miles. I didn't know if the message was from Blake or someone else. I didn't respond, but a terrifying realization struck me in that moment. They didn't just assume I didn't know. They were betting on the idea that I wouldn't do anything even if I did. They thought I was weak. I returned to the airport that evening without ever letting her see me. When she texted at 8:46 p.m., "Landed safe, long day already, talk soon." I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because the next move wasn't going to come from her, it was going to come from me, and this time I wasn't going to walk away quietly. The day after I returned from Miami, the silence between us felt radioactive. Celine returned 2 days later, her suitcase lighter, her face brighter, like someone who had just pressed restart on their very soul. She walked through the door holding a small white box. "I got you something," she announced. It was a linen shirt, neatly folded, a tropical print, tag still on. Something she'd likely picked up at a boutique, hand in hand with Blake, laughing at their shared secrets, sipping overpriced cocktails overlooking the ocean. I held it in my hands and nodded. I offered no thanks. I didn't meet her gaze, and for the first time I believe she sensed something was profoundly amiss. I wasn't being passive-aggressive. I wasn't being cold. I was being surgical, quiet, measured, careful. She asked if I wanted dinner. I said I had work. She asked if I was okay. I said I was tired. She didn't push, which told me everything I needed to know. She had something to conceal, and she was terrified of what I might already know. What she didn't know was that while she was gone, I wasn't just waiting. I was talking, connecting dots, pulling threads. I remembered Elias's words about leverage. That word clung to me. Blake wasn't just having an affair. He was building something with her, and that meant they weren't being stupid. They were being strategic. The lies weren't random, they were rehearsed. I accessed our shared online storage account, the one we used to dump files, tax forms, travel itineraries, things Celine forgot. I still had access, or perhaps she assumed I'd never check. But buried deep in a subfolder labeled Work Docs was a scanned lease agreement, a luxury apartment, in her name, not far from Blake's penthouse, signed 2 weeks ago, move-in date in a month, rent $800 a month. She hadn't breathed a word to me about moving, not a single syllable, yet she'd already meticulously planned her exit. It grew worse. I dug deeper and found email threads between her and a property manager using her personal Gmail account. In one, she specifically inquired about adding a second occupant after the first month of the lease. She didn't name Blake. She didn't have to. He was already listed as an emergency contact. His phone number, his office email, his initials on the final page of the application. They were planning a life together without me. Not just a fleeting fling, not just hotel rooms and whispered lies, a full relocation. She was going to leave me and never even tell me to my face. My ribs felt like glass. Everything inside me cracked at once, and yet I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because something told me this wasn't just about her betrayal. There was something else beneath it all. A current I hadn't touched. I needed to know why. Why me? Why now? What made her decide to ruin a marriage so quietly, so completely? That night I called Elias. He answered on the second ring. "I know they're planning something," I said. He paused for a beat. "You're not wrong." "You said she was building leverage. What does that mean?" "I didn't want to get involved this far," he said. "But you're already in it. So I'll tell you this. Blake doesn't just sleep with women. He turns them into tools. He positions them, gives them titles, lets them believe they're rising until they're too deep to walk away. And Celine? She's been promoted twice in 6 months, hasn't she? No degree, no corporate background, but she suddenly has her name on press releases and internal briefings." I went cold. "Yes," I managed. "That's not because she's smart. It's because she's obedient." The word hit me like a slap. I despised it. I despised him for uttering it. But a part of me already knew it was true. She hadn't just fallen for him. She had bought into his system, sold herself to it willingly. Then Elia said one more thing, something that will forever be etched in my memory. "Did she tell you she's pregnant?" I froze. "What?" "I overheard Blake talking at that hotel bar. Said something about handling a situation before it gets messy. He was drunk, loud, careless. I didn't hear everything, but it wasn't just business. I felt the air punched from my lungs. My knees nearly buckled. 3 weeks earlier, Celine had casually mentioned she'd skipped her period. Said it could be stress, travel, maybe hormones. She'd brushed it off. Said she'd take a test if it didn't show up in a few more days. And I hadn't thought anything of it. Now I did. And suddenly I wasn't just a man watching his marriage crumble. I was a man staring into a question that could shatter what little was left of me. What if the child she's carrying isn't mine? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat down in the kitchen, turned the lights off, and stared into the dark. Because I needed to know how far she'd gone before I decided how far I'd go. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning an ending she would never see coming. And it wouldn't be loud. It would be clean. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on her side of the bed, empty, staring up at the ceiling fan as it spun slow, hypnotic circles, trying to make sense of what I knew and what I suspected. The idea that she might be pregnant was already enough to short-circuit every sane part of my brain. But what Elias had revealed went beyond anything I was prepared to confront. He made it sound as if Celine wasn't just cheating, she was being used, and not by accident. The next morning, she was oddly affectionate. She made coffee, cooked eggs, even offered to drive me to work, something she hadn't done in years. I declined. I watched her closely. She moved lightly with an unsettling ease, as if she'd secured what she wanted and now merely had to play a part long enough for the pieces to fall into place. She kissed me goodbye and smiled, as if her guilt had either been processed or buried so deep that even she had forgotten its existence. The minute the door closed, I opened her laptop again. I wasn't looking for more evidence. I had enough to burn the whole house down. But something had been bothering me. Why the silence? Why hadn't she already made her move? She had the apartment, she had the affair, she had Blake, and yet she stayed, played wife, made eggs. That's when I found it. A folder titled Pinning Contracts, hidden inside another labeled Personal Docs. Inside were PDFs, contracts from Blake's firm, all signed electronically. But one stood out. It was dated 2 months ago. A clause referenced a bonus package triggered by a post-divorce executive transition. My name was literally listed as a bullet point, Rory Prescott's spousal coverage buyout. My stomach dropped. They weren't just planning to move in together, they were planning to monetize my divorce. It all made sense now. She wasn't leaving yet because she needed to tick off a few more boxes on her checklist. Timing, publicity, legal shielding. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a number and a file, a liability they were negotiating around. She was waiting for the perfect moment to cash out, the moment where everything would be done on their terms, not mine. But what she didn't know, and what made me incredibly dangerous now, was that I wasn't just reading her secrets. I was tracking her in real time. I'd installed an app on her iPad, one she rarely used, but which shared notifications and GPS history with her phone. Every step she took, I could see it. Her calls, her texts, not the contents, but the frequency, the timestamps, sometimes even the metadata. And 2 nights later, she made a critical mistake. She told me she was going to visit her cousin Marcy in Buckhead. I nodded, didn't question it. But within 20 minutes, her GPS pinged her at a parking garage downtown, on the same street where Blake's firm had a satellite office. Then she moved again, into the tower, up 12 floors, then back down. Then over to the Ritz-Carlton across the street, Suite 2410. She stayed there for over 4 hours. When she came home, I said nothing, but I recorded everything, logged the times, matched the movement to her calendar. And something else stood out. The morning before that, she'd had a doctor's appointment, OB-GYN. She hadn't mentioned it, just said she had some errands after work. That night, I watched from the bedroom as she entered something into her laptop. Her back was to me, shoulders stiff. She typed fast, nervous, clicked, paused, clicked again, then shut the screen. When she went to shower, I opened the lid, and there it was, a message draft, addressed to Blake. Subject line, confirmed. No body text, just that. She hadn't sent it yet. She was waiting. That word, confirmed. It echoed in my brain like a siren in a tunnel. She was pregnant, and she hadn't told either of us yet. I sat back frozen. I felt no hate, no rage. What I felt was worse, cold, absolute clarity, that my marriage was now a stage play running its final scene, that everything I thought I knew about this woman was dead. She wasn't confused, she wasn't lost. She was calculated. She was going to announce the pregnancy, then the separation, then spin the narrative. She'd probably have a press release ready, something about growth, new beginnings, mutual respect. She'd paint me as the quiet, distant husband who didn't fight for her, who never supported her dreams. She would twist the truth until people applauded her, congratulated her on finding herself. But I was done letting her direct the story. and so I began writing my own version. It started with a visit to a lawyer, not just any lawyer, divorce crisis management. The kind of team that handles high conflict separations privately while quietly gathering and securing every piece of leverage. I showed them the lease, the contracts, the timelines, the metadata, even the folder with the word confirmed. They didn't blink. They'd seen worse. But what truly captured their attention, what really shifted the energy in the room, was when I mentioned Elias, the man with the footage, the man who apparently had a few more clips. The team asked if I could get him to talk. I said yes, because what Celine didn't know was that I was no longer trying to save the marriage. I was preserving my own future. And she was about to learn what happens when the man you thought was a footnote suddenly becomes the one writing the ending. It happened over dinner. No fancy setup, no dramatic scene. Just two people sitting at opposite ends of a kitchen table pretending not to be enemies. She'd made pasta, her go-to comfort food whenever something weighed heavily on her mind. That should have been the first clue, but I feigned ignorance. I cut my food slowly, drank water instead of wine, and waited for her to speak. She didn't, not right away. She circled the topic like a shark sensing blood. Small talk, light laughs, questions about my day, all the usual noise people employ when they're too scared to voice what truly matters. But I wasn't going to rescue her from the silence this time. I let it grow heavy, dense. I watched her try to chew through it, blink through it, sip through it. Then, finally, she spoke. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." I didn't flinch. "Go on." She looked down at her plate, twisting her fork like a nervous child. "I found out something recently, and I wasn't sure how to bring it up, but I can't keep it from you anymore." I said not a word. I didn't have to. She was already unraveling. "I'm pregnant." Her voice cracked on the second word. Not from sadness, but from sheer effort. She was attempting to sound vulnerable as if this were some delicate gift she was offering, when in reality it was a live grenade she'd been concealing under the table. I took a slow breath. "I know." She froze. The silence that followed wasn't confusion, it was calculation. She was recalibrating, attempting to ascertain how much I truly knew and what I might do with it. "What do you mean, you know?" "I saw the email," I said. "The draft to Blake, you titled it Confirmed." She didn't speak. She didn't deny it. She didn't ask how I accessed it. That was all the confirmation I needed. So I continued, setting my fork down. "Is it his?" Her lips parted as if she were about to say yes. Then she shook her head. "I don't know." A whisper, honest for once, but still brutal. I leaned back in my chair, allowing that answer to settle between us. There was no anger on my face, no raised voice, just a look that conveyed, "You've already said enough." And yet she kept talking. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It wasn't even supposed to be serious. At first, I just felt so invisible, Rory. You work, you read, you disappear into your screens. You never chased me. That was her truth, her version. I was the villain, not because I cheated, not because I lied, but because I didn't chase her down when she drifted. She expected the same man who trusted her to also doubt her, to fight her, to protect her from the choices she made herself. "Blake saw me," she continued, her voice trembling. "He made me feel like I could be something more than just your wife. I didn't mean to fall for him. I didn't plan this." "But you planned the apartment and the exit," I said flatly. Her expression twisted. "Do you love him?" I asked. She hesitated. Then she nodded. That should have shattered me. It didn't. Because in that moment, something inside me finally clicked into place. A sense of release, of a weight lifted. I didn't have to wonder anymore. I didn't have to play detective. The body was already on the table. I just had to write the report. "I want a divorce," I said calmly. Her face didn't contort in shock. She didn't cry. She blinked a few times, then whispered, "I figured." "I won't fight you, but I also won't protect you," I added. She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means whatever comes next, press, contracts, fallout, that's on you. I've already hired a legal team, one that specializes in high-value splits with public-facing reputations, yours and Blake's." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You can't." "I already did." For the first time since she sat down, I saw something close to fear on her face. "I'm not going to ruin you, Celine. I'm going to free myself. What happens to you after that? It's just collateral." She stood slowly. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said, rising to meet her eyes. "I'm reminding you that you don't own the story anymore." She backed away as if the air had shifted, as if the room wasn't hers anymore. And it wasn't. That night she didn't sleep in our bed. She didn't utter another word. She walked into the guest room and closed the door gently, not slamming it like someone angry, but sealing it like someone who knew her chapter had ended. But what she didn't know was that the next morning I would do the one thing she never expected. I was going to take the story public, not out of revenge, out of truth. I had nothing left to lose, and that made me the most dangerous man in the room. The morning after I told her I was done, I woke up to silence. Not the tense, suffocating kind that had filled our home for weeks, but a silence that felt like breathing again. The kind you feel when a storm finally passes. She didn't say goodbye when she left that morning. Just walked out the front door with her purse and her phone, and for once she didn't look back. And I didn't chase. I didn't call Elias. I didn't dig for more. I didn't post anything online. I didn't need to, because winning wasn't about exposing her. It was about escaping the prison she tried to keep me in. I finalized everything with the legal team quietly. The moment she stepped into that new apartment, the papers were served. The divorce was filed under mutual separation. No press, no scandal. But I'd taken the necessary steps to protect everything I'd built. My savings, my business, my dignity. I'd been cautious, thorough. I didn't let pain make me reckless. And because of that, I walked away with everything she thought I'd lose. A few weeks later, I received a letter from her lawyer. She wanted to settle quickly. No disputes, no negotiation, just out. I signed it the same day, and when I did, I felt something break loose inside me. Not grief, not sadness, but freedom. I sold the house, took the dog, moved to a different city, smaller, quieter. I found a place near a lake where the mornings begin with still water and no one knows your name unless you want them to. I took up hiking again, got back into playing music, reconnected with people I hadn't spoken to in years. Not because they left, but because I'd been too busy holding up a marriage that wasn't holding me back. It was holding me down. And then, one day, a message came from her. Simple. "I hope you're doing okay. I think about you a lot." I didn't answer. Not because I hated her. I didn't. Not even close. In fact, I was grateful. She broke me in a way that forced me to rebuild. She hurt me in a way that taught me to pay attention, not just to people, but to myself. And she taught me the most valuable lesson I'll ever carry. You don't have to destroy someone to rise. Sometimes you just have to walk away when it costs you everything and trust that peace is worth the price. 6 months later, I met someone, not through apps, not in a bar, just life, a bookstore, a shared glance, a conversation about the scent of old pages. Her name's May. She's kind. She listens more than she speaks, and when she laughs, it's never forced. I told her everything, not in one overwhelming rush, but piece by piece. And instead of looking at me like a man broken by the past, she looked at me like a man who survived it. Now we walk every evening by the lake. No secrets, no games. Just real life, one slow breath at a time. So if you're reading this, perhaps you're where I was. Let me tell you something you won't hear often enough. You don't need closure to move on. You just need courage. I didn't get justice. I got something better. I got my life back. And this time, I'm the one writing it, page by page, without apology. Ladies and gentlemen, since you've listened to the end of this story, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments which state you're watching from. Let's see what percentage of elite viewers make it to the end. And please kindly turn your attention to the screen after this message. There you'll find a full playlist of thrilling stories, a subscribe button for the channel, and our most captivating story. Click, enjoy, and thank you.